Hi, welcome to Block 4, Operations and Equations with Directed Number, Lesson 14. I'll share my screen. So, in your previous lesson, you learned how to work with roots of numbers, how to find the roots of numbers, the square roots of numbers. In this lesson, you're going to explore higher powers and roots. It's quite an interesting lesson, so pay close attention. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the video. Click on the notification bell so that when new videos are posted, you will be notified. By doing that, you help us grow our mission to provide a platform where children, regardless of their economic circumstance, can have access to high quality maths education. Thank you. Before we start, I would like you to do these retrieval practice questions in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. For the first one, you were asked to square 5. 5 squared is 25. Negative 5 squared is 25. 5 cubed is, I'm sure you may have figured that out. 5 cubed means 5 times 5 times 5. And then square root of 64 is 8. Square root of 64 can also be 8. And square root of 81 is 9. Square root of 144 is 12. If I use the calculator to work out the square of negative 11, now when I said square root, I need to, backtrack. When I said square root of 64 can also be negative 8, that is only useful when you're working with equations. Remember, we are only interested in the principal root of the number, so the positive answer to the number. Okay? But when we're solving equations, we're interested in the negative part of the answer because we know that negative 8 squared will give us 64. So it's really important you note this difference. If I use the calculator to work out the square of negative 11, she got an answer of negative 121. What mistake did Eva make? Eva may not have used the brackets to hold the negative 11 before squaring. Okay, let's look at our new learning. What do you think 3 squared is? Well, 3 squared is 3 times 2. 3 times 3. It's also important for you to know some of the key vocabulary that we use when we talk about powers and roots. 3 is the base and 2 is the power or index. How do we calculate it? Like I said earlier, is 3 times 3. 3 squared means 3 times 3. But if we have a higher power, and we know 3 times 3 is 9. If we have a higher power, 3 to the power 4, 3 is the base and 4 is the power or index. How do we calculate this? Have a think. Well, to calculate this, you simply multiply 3 by itself 4 times. So 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, which is 81. I want you to think about these, so I'll do the first 3 and then I'll let you complete the others. So 2 to the power 1 is 2. 2 to the power 2 is 2 times 2. 2 to the power 3 is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. What do you think the others will be? All right, I'm sure you've explored it. You think, okay, I'll just continue the pattern. So that's the answers for these ones. But what about these? What would the results be? You can use your calculator to explore it. Well, here is what we will get. You may have noticed a pattern when we place them together. So look at the numbers carefully. I'll give you a hint. Look at the numbers where the powers are odd. There is something interesting taking place. Well, the conclusion we can draw from here is that when the powers are odd and the base is negative, our answer will be negative. But if the base is negative, but the power is even, we will have a positive number. It's now time for you to practice using the knowledge you've gathered. Pause the video and answer questions 1 to 3 in 4 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So for the first one, you were asked to match the calculations and the answers. So it was a simple exercise of matching the base with the power and the actual result of your calculation. For question 2, you were asked, without using a calculator, evaluate these values. And those are the answers. Okay, so using your general knowledge, you should know that the ones with the odd value, the one with the odd value will have a negative result. Next, you were asked to work out the values of the cube of 8, the cube of negative 8, and the cube root of 8. And those are the results. So the cube of 8 means 8 times 8 times 8. The cube root of 8, you should use your calculator to do that. You can use your calculator to do that. The cube root of negative 8 is negative 2. Now, I want you to take full note of this result because we're going to discuss why, or we're going to notice that we can do the cube root of a negative number, but we cannot actually do the square root of a negative number. It's not as if we cannot do it, but it is not within the realm of what we're learning in year 7. Okay, that is for when you study advanced maths. So it will give us a complex number, which we're not doing in this lesson. Pause the video and answer question 4 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 4, here are the answers. So you were simply asked to write the calculations in the correct columns. The answer of 16. Well, these are the questions that match that answer. The answer of 64. Those are the numbers that match that answer. And the answer of 81. Those are the questions that match that answer. Pause the video and answer question 5 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So this one required a bit of work for you to figure out what the answers are. But when you start working with higher powers and roots, you begin to recognize some numbers and their patterns, and you would know exactly what the result would be. Pause the video and answer question 6 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So you were asked to use a calculator to complete the tables. And then you were asked to write what patterns you notice between the values. The numbers are the same, but in the second table, every other value is negative. Why? It's because we have the negative base and the odd powers. So remember, when you have a negative base and an odd power, your answer will be negative. It's something really important you need to take note of. How do you know that negative 2.5 to the power 3 will be positive, to the power 8 will be positive? Is because the power is even. So take note of that pattern. It's very important. Okay, let's do some more exploring. Okay, so we'll move on to the second segment of our lesson before you practice. So 3 squared is equal to 9. Negative 3 squared is 9. What is the square root of 9? The square root of 9 is 3. What is the square root of negative 9? The square root of negative 9 is, well, It doesn't exist in your calculator, at least. But if you study advanced mathematics, we have complex numbers. So we do not have a real square root that your calculator will give you as the square root of -9. So take note. But for a cube root, we can do the cube of 27, the cube of 3, which is 3 to the power 3, is 27. And the cube of -3 is -27. The cube root of 27 is 3. And the cube root of -27 is -3. So something really important you need to know is that while you can do the square root of a positive number, you cannot do the square root of a negative number. There are no real square roots for that. It doesn't exist. Well, at least in year 7. But in A-level maths, it does exist. Or in university maths, it does exist. But there exists the cube root of negative number. So it's very important for you to know. Well, let's do some more learning and conjecture or drawing some conclusions from patterns we notice. You can use your calculator to explore this. Will the answers to these calculations be positive or negative? What do you think? Well, the answers would be positive for all those where you have the base to be positive. And for all those where you have the base to be negative and the index is odd, you would have a negative answer. But for the one where it is negative, but you have an even power, you would have a positive number. Okay, so it's really important you notice these patterns. The square root of 25 is, the square root of 25 is 5. Well, what you didn't know is that it answers this question. This square root of 25 comes from this equation, this question, x squared is equal to 25. Well, if we use the same pattern, we can say, well, x cubed must be 27. All right. So we're now exploring higher roots. We've explored higher powers. We're now exploring higher roots. What about if we have this? We know that if we put this in our calculator, we'll get the answer 10. So the way to write it is we would say, well, it means it's using the same pattern, x to the power 4 is equal to 10,000. What about this? We would write in way, we would say x to the power 5 is equal to 32. But how do we do this in our calculators? Well, in your calculator, this is the sign for the square root. But you also have the cube root. But there is another key in your calculator that looks like this. And that is what we would use to do higher roots. So if we wanted to work out x to the power 4, the fourth root of 10,000, we would use this key. We would use the arrow button that we use to move the cursor, put the value of 4 where the x is, and put 10,000 where the y is. And that would give us the result. It's now time for you to pause the video and do some practice from what you've learned. Pause the video and answer questions 7 and 8 in 4 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So here they're asking you to circle all the calculations that will have a negative answer. Did you remember that we had a general conjecture, or we reached a conclusion, or we saw a pattern that when you have a negative base and an odd power, you can see we're going to have negative answers. But all these that are negative but have even powers will have positive answers. Next, you were asked to work out the calculations using your calculator to help you. So 27, you have the roots to the 1, 27 will be 27. Okay, so you're beginning to see how the powers, the roots, they work. This one, you can use your calculator to do this, calculator, and your calculator can do this. Okay? Yeah, of course, we can have more than one possible solution, but we won't explore that now. Question 9, pause the video and answer questions 9 and 10 in 4 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So here you were asked to complete the function machines, use a calculator to help you. So we have negative 27, and then next we have negative 3. Did you remember which one gives us a negative number? Of course, it's the cube root. And then here we have input 27. We have the power. Of course, to be able to get that, we'll have to have 27, and then we cube 27 to get that number. Here we have the cube, the fourth root. So it means you're going to use your calculator to do this. Put the fourth root and you get 5. Here it means you need to have 4 to the power, 4 to that power, which you can do with your calculator. I wouldn't want the video to be too long, but the answer to this is negative 2. So Tommy and Rosie think of the same number. Tommy squares the number. Rosie cubes the number. Tommy's answer is greater than Rosie's. What number could Tommy and Rosie be thinking of? All right, the answer is negative 2. And that brings us to the end of our lesson. So what we have learned exploring higher powers and roots is that you can make effective use of the higher power button in your calculator, or you can use the roots, the higher roots function in your calculator to do your calculations involving higher powers and roots. And you've learned some general patterns that you have noticed why we use the higher powers and roots knowledge and applied it to solving problems. Well done for sticking around and for taking your learning seriously. Until next time, take really good care of yourself and bye-bye.